Welcome to the Stochastic MLB DFS Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Adam Scher. You can find him on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And this show is sponsored by SoRare MLB, which is a digital trading card and NFT-based free-to-play MLB game. We'll talk about SoRare MLB a little bit more later on. While you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Adam, how did yesterday go for you?
It went well in terms of how my lineups did. It didn't go well in terms of making money. Played 50 in the large field DraftKings tournament, had 5 of them in the top 1%, lost $55. So, played well. Nothing else you can do.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, are those more frustrating though when you know that you played so well and then you just still lose money on the slate? I mean, to me, I think that's like, it's good to know that you're playing well and also super frustrating when it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's both. Obviously, I would take a week of really good finishes and not winning over a week of like not coming close, because at least you can fall back on like knowing that your lineups did well. So I'll take that. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating. That doesn't frustrate me as much. I think the most frustrating is still like when you make a little bit of money, but it's you finished in like 10th.
That is the most frustrating. Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, like yesterday, I had 2 in the top 100, but it was still, like, I don't know, 65th and 75th or something. So it's not like I can just like stare at it and be like, oh, well, if this idiot had just done a little bit better.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think those are the most frustrating when like you have a team break away, but it doesn't really get there.
Especially when you have like the late stack and it's like you're chasing, just like I had that happen a few times last year. It was just like, all right, I just need like one hit out of one of these 3 guys to push me to the top or like near the top, whatever. And then they just all strike out and it's like, what the fuck? Just like that is that's frustrating.
Like I was DMing with somebody I'm friends with that yesterday in like the 4th or 5th inning of the Giants game. I think he was in like 5th and he had a full Giant stack and nobody ahead of him did. And then it ended up being that just basically the wrong Giants went off, so he fell back. That stuff frustrates me more than anything.
Yeah,
like
that is
you're just sitting there like, oh, I have 25 innings remaining and nobody ahead of me has anything, and I have the visiting team in cores, like I'm good, and then you just get passed by a bunch of other teams that have the same stack.
Yeah, that's frustrating as hell. Speaking of yesterday's slate, now would be a good time, I think, to take a look at the post contest simulator that we have at Stochastic. We've been talking about the Sims tool plenty. A lot of people are looking at it more for the pre-contest sims, which allows you to enter a bunch of lineups, sim them against each other. But the post-contest sim also very cool, but it's because it's going to tell you what we have your projected ROI as being, your simulated lineup ROI based on actual lineups that were entered in the contest. So based on actual ownership, actual lineups in the contest, what our Sims tool would have had your ROI at over many sims. So kind of cool to look at this. We had Dark Magician Girl took down the tournament yesterday. It's kind of funny. You and I are in a Discord together. I don't know if you saw it, but somebody was had seen this screen name like a day before and was telling Jesse that this was meant to be his girlfriend, Dark Magician Girl, downside of me. We're meant for each other. And then the very next day, Dark Magician Girl takes down the tournament. That's really cool to see.
Yeah. With a non-stacked lineup, if I remember correctly.
Is that right? I did not realize that. So let's see.
I think it was like a kind of like a 2-2-1-1-1-2, maybe. I don't know. Like it was definitely different.
Yeah, so had Lucas Giolito and Joe Musgrove at pitcher. We got some Lamont Wade, Tyro Estrada, Conforto. So that's what, three Giants. I'm going to get myself in trouble again here, because some of these players, I'm like, I'm not 100% sure what team.
So it's Rockies, Giants, Brewers. Athletics, Brewers, Giants, Rockies.
Okay, so like
3 Giants, 2 Brewers, 2 Rockies, and an Athletic.
Okay. It's a different kind of construction.
3-2-2-1.
And not unexpected that we actually had this lineup with a negative sim ROI. Not going to win all that often, but I don't think that Dark Magician Girl cares, because the actual lineup ROI is what we ultimately care about. That is 224 fantasy points, kind of insane there. But we can look at. I'm curious what the sim lineup ROI. What was the top that we had on the board here? And it was, of course, a Utica lineup. Didn't cash, but Utica had a lineup with crazy high sim lineup ROI in this actual contest.
Clark Schmidt. I had that same problem last night.
Yep, me too. Played a little bit of Clark Schmidt there. But again, this tool is kind of revolutionizing the industry. I don't want to say breaking DFS because you can win without the tool, but it's certainly helping you a lot if you do get access to this tool. It is definitely revolutionizing the way I'm going to be playing DFS. It's revolutionizing the way many people are going to be playing DFS, and it's just $6 a day, $180 a month for the Sims tool. I know it's a lot of money, but it's really you want to learn how to use it now so that you can get better as the field gets better at DFS. Highly recommend signing up for the Sims tool if you haven't already. The link is in the description of this video. I wonder if we have I might have a link somewhere for it as well, but make sure you check out the Sims tool if you haven't already. Fantastic new tool that we're the only site out there that has a Sims tool that allows you to sim the actual contest and look at expected ROI after the contest based on actual lineups that were in the contest. So very, very cool tool here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you said something important there too. Like it's not like you can't win without it. It is, like you said, it's expensive. It's not the best idea for everybody, like depending on what stakes you're playing. You can still win without it, but the way I view it is it's just another tool where if you can afford it, it's just going to bridge that gap for you. Like I know one question that's come up a lot in shows I've done over the years is people kind of trying to I'll mention using Excel and doing stuff outside of Fantasy Cruncher, and people sort of ask me like what I'm doing, and I'll sometimes answer and sometimes I won't, but like this is more advanced than anything I was doing on my own, but it's in the same vein. And it's kind of just, it's another simplified way, efficient way for you to just at least be in the same ballpark as what the top players, not referring to myself in that sentence, but as what top players are doing, because they're not just running projections and then throwing those lineups in, like they are doing other things. And this is one of those other things. And it's just, something that can very quickly elevate your game from where it currently is.
Right. And as you know, Adam, I do the High Stakes podcast where I interview a lot of the top players in the game. And that's been a fairly, not all of them do Sims, but like a lot of the players who have had long-term success are just simulate. Like they have their own simulators. Right. This allows you to be kind of closer to what they are doing. Now, obviously, you still have to use your own inputs and stuff, but this just gets you closer to like what the top of the top pros are doing. Huge step in the right direction for
the way I've kind of talked about it with like Josh and with other people is I still remember when I started doing stuff outside of Fantasy Cruncher, using Excel and using that to like sort and rank lineups and stuff back at the start of 2019. I remember when I started doing that being like, oh, this is clearly giving me better lineups than I was making previously. This is obviously just like giving me more of an advantage than I had. Whatever my edge was before, it's bigger now. And, that was 2019. So it was 4 years ago. And, a lot of people have started doing the same thing, if not better. And once I started, sort of playing around with this and thinking about it, one, I felt dumb for not thinking to do it before. But two, it feels the same way to me where it's like, okay, everybody sort of caught up to what I thought my new edge was. And then now it's like, okay, well, there's this, which is giving me even better lineups than I was making before. And so I kind of feel in DFS, I always feel like it takes like 2 to 3 years for the field to just like adjust, and you need a new strategy or you're going to lose. That's basically how my results have always looked. Win for a couple of years, just get cleaned out for a year, learn from it, figure something out, do better for a couple of years, and then rinse and repeat. So that's sort of how I'm viewing this. Is it feels to me very much like the big step I took forward in 2019, where I had a couple really good years before, obviously having to sort of sit back down and reset again.
Yeah, 100%. This feels to me like, as you said, it's kind of like the next step in the DFS evolution. And it's going to take a little bit of time for enough of the field to start playing this way. So we're like, eventually, maybe enough of the field is going to play this way that it's not going to be a huge advantage. But at least for now, for a couple of years, like you're going to have a huge advantage over the people not using it. And then, of course, in whenever the field does adjust, you're still going to need it because you need it to keep up with the field.
Right. I said it to Josh the other day. I was like, the way this is going to go is like right now, this is going to elevate whatever percentage of people use it that weren't previously, using their own Sims or whatever. It's going to elevate their games. And then over the course of the next, I was like 2 years from now, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using the Sims tool to simulate, everything. But then you're going to be taking what the top lineups are in the Sim tool and then re-simulating like against those to account for the field playing so heavily towards what the Sim's spitting out. Like it's going to change ownership and just, sort of change the game. But right now it's, you don't need to go the second level yet. You just kind of can use this to your advantage. Tommy David Walker said, if I'm a 5 to 10 lineup guy, is this still recommended? Yes and no. Like it's still going to help you. It is certainly a investment question. Like, I don't know from that question, like what stakes you're playing. If you're playing low stakes, you're probably first going to be helped out more by using the lineup generator.
Yep.
And, because that from a price point, it's more in line with like the stakes you're playing. But if it makes sense for the stakes you're playing, then yeah, it's certainly going to help you in 5 to 10.
It's funny that you say yes and no, because somebody asked us the same question. I think they asked if you would buy it for 1 to 5 lineups on Live Before Lock yesterday. And Greg and I responded at the same time, with me saying, I probably wouldn't for 1 to 5 lineups. And Greg saying, yeah, you can certainly use it for 1 to 5 lineups, which I think that both of us are correct. Like, yes, you can use this. And if you are planning on increasing your volume, it's maybe a good idea to use it right now. But also, if I'm just planning on playing, if I'm a casual player playing 1 to 5 lineups per day, I'd much rather just go to lineup generator. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to invest in like low stakes 1 to 5 lineups. It's more for if you're playing high volume, or if you are planning on playing high volume, it is a good idea to buy it now to like learn how to use it for when you really are going to be playing high volume.
Right. Yeah. Like if I were playing one lineup, but I'm playing like the $2,000 single entry and down, I'm
Yeah,
still using this tool and just
100%.
putting in a set of lineups that reflects those small field high stakes tournaments. It's still going to make you better and still going to help you out. If I'm playing, 5 to 10 lineups in like the mini max, and so my total entries are $5 or whatever that comes out to, then clearly like it just becomes unless, like you said, you're just you're going to be moving up in stakes and you just want to get familiar
Right.
with it. It becomes very difficult to profit in that tournament if you're paying $180 a month. But so
Yeah.
it's not so much the quality of lineups as your stakes. But I do in general think that like if you're playing low stakes and it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a big monthly outlay into tools, then lineup generator is probably your best bet. Just you're still getting quality lineups, you're still going to be better in those tournaments, and then as you move up, and it makes more sense, then you move on to this. But again, if you're playing, if you're playing 3 max, but you're just playing all of the most expensive 3 max tournaments, then yeah, it's still going to be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's more about the dollar value that you're playing day to day rather than the number of lineups. Because it's actually, I would say it's even better for like stuff that is 2,000 or fewer lineups that are
Right.
in the contest. Like, those are the best contests for the tool currently. So it really
Right.
is more about the
Yeah, like
dollar
I
amount.
think it's a great tool for that. Like one thing I've always had trouble with when I try and go from large field to small field is like exactly how much should I be discounting ownership because I have less teams to beat and all of that. Whereas with
Right.
this, you can say like, all right, well, I'm playing this small field tournament. I know that the chalk's going to be chalky or the unowned teams are basically going to be unowned. I can enter lineups that reflect that, and it's going to basically answer my question of how much should I be adjusting.
Yep. Yep, good point. And I think both Steve Buzzard and Greg put out tutorials on how to use the tool. So check those out if you haven't already. I think they both posted them on Twitter. So if you like if it sounds interesting to you, but you haven't yet figured out what we're talking about exactly, they actually put out tutorials. Highly recommend checking that out. I see Out to Lunchable says, hey buddy, I was inducted into the Stochastic HOF on Monday. Is there more on my part to do to get my free month of Stochastic? When you say you're inducted, do you mean that like Lofty did the video? Because I assume if Lofty inducted you in a video, you were in a contest of 5,000 or more entries, you placed in the top 3, and you had the Stochastic avatar, you should be good to go. If Lofty did the shout out for you, if you haven't already done all of the steps beyond being top 3 in a contest of 5,000 or more, then yeah, make sure that you have the Stochastic avatar in your screenshot, tweet it out to at Stochastic HOF on Twitter. And then Lofty will give you the shout out. You should win that free month. But if nobody reaches out to you, you probably need to reach out to support to get that free month if you haven't already gotten it. So reach out to the support email, I believe would be the next step if you haven't already gotten your free month, or if nobody's reached out on Twitter or anything. All right, Adam, we should jump in and talk about this upcoming slate a little bit. Looks like another pretty interesting slate. Of course, we've got a Coors Field slate and also a Patrick Corbin slate. We'll talk about that, the Corbin part of it, right away. We've got Arizona at Washington. Zach Davies on the mound for the D-backs. Patrick Corbin on the mound for the Nationals. Playing either of these pitchers?
Probably not. Davies does have a solid matchup going up against one of the weaker offenses in baseball. Still not a lot of strikeouts there for Washington, though. Probably not really going to need to get to Davies, who himself isn't a great strikeout pitcher either. You have a 4.5 implied run total for the Nats, which is relatively high for them. And then on the other side, definitely not interested in Corbin. He is somebody that I play occasionally, but there's a couple things that are different here. One, he is somehow $7,200 on DraftKings. Typically, I sort of just, hold my nose and click his name when he's like, 6K. So much more difficult sell at 7,200. But then also, very difficult matchup with Arizona, solid offense. So no real interest in the pitching here for me.
I forget that you think Corbin is a little bit better than some other people. Like, not that you think he's good, but do you think that he is one of your like top 10 starting pitchers that you'd like to face if you're stacking a team?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Top 5?
I mean, I think it would be pretty fair to say he's kind of taken over the Madison Bumgarner role.
Okay. So you do like still stacking against Patrick Corbin?
Yeah, I think he's very bad. I think that from a fantasy standpoint, sometimes he goes overlooked because no fully stretched out starting pitcher should really ever be like $5,600, and he gets down into that price range, and like hitting is still really hard. So like there's slates, there's weak pitching slates where I do think Corbin goes overlooked when he's really cheap, just because like he is still a functioning major league pitcher. But I do still think he's really bad.
All right. Well, with that in mind, how much interest do you have in the bats in this game?
Definitely interested in both sides here. The Diamondbacks have the more appealing matchup. They have the better hitters. They're a little bit more expensive, but not too bad. I mean, you have Emmanuel Rivera at 3,100. Walker's only 3,900, which makes no sense to me. Evan Longoria at third base, 2,800. Now, on DraftKings, you can only roster 2 of those 3 guys. Rivera's first base, third base, Walker first base, Longoria third. But all 3 of them look good from a value standpoint. Obviously, you can go to Corbin Carroll, even lefty. He's just insanely good. Ketel Marte is a strong second base option. If Gurriel's in the lineup, he looks good at 4K. You have a $2,900 Gabby Moreno as a high upside catcher option. Diamondbacks are going to look really good right now in the top stacks tool. They are coming in third behind only the Giants in cores and the Dodgers against somebody I've not heard of. So yeah, they look good. 8.5% chance of being the top stack, 10% aggregate ownership, but also an 11.5% chance of being the top value stack is the highest on the slate. So third in top stack percentage, third in stack score. They look really good. Washington coming in sixth in stack score, just behind Arizona with an 11% chance of being the top value against Davies. So they're pretty cheap. Certainly don't mind taking hitters against Davies. He is probably a better pitcher than Patrick Corbin. Only a 126 expected ISO to lefties this year, 138 to righties. If you go back to last year, it's 158 to lefties, 185 to righties. So, again, doesn't give up the same amount of power, but he does still let you put the ball in play. He doesn't miss a lot of bats. You have a very reasonably priced Washington team where Lane Thomas at 4,400 is the most expensive hitter in the projected lineup on DraftKings. You have Garcia and Candelario at 4K. Everybody else is cheaper. So this is a team where if you are paying up for pitching, or if you are jamming in really good one-offs around a cheaper stack, Washington certainly fits in that regard. So definitely interested in both sides here.
Adam, I appreciate how good you are at responding quickly to my prompts after doing a show with Greg yesterday, where he was like clearly caught off guard every time he would like go through the pitchers. And then I'd be like, all right, how about the bats? And he'd be like, wait, what? Like just like totally catching him off guard every time with my quick transitions to the next.
So unpredictable that you would ask about the hitters after the pitcher.
Yeah, he was not ready for it. And he also was not willing to do a full ranking of each side of the game. He would just say, I have no interest in these 2 players, so just like play the other 2. Whereas you actually give me a ranking.
Got to go out and take some stands, Greg. Come on, man.
Yeah, come on, Greg. He was saying like, well, I'm not going to give a ranking of somebody that I'm just not going to play at all. I don't want to recommend everybody, but come on, Greg, that's part of the fun.
That's not recommending. It's saying that they're last.
Generally, if they're last out of the 4 on a lot of in a lot of games, you're probably not playing them. I guess that's not always true. All right, how about in this Arizona-Washington game? How would you rank the 4 sides?
Arizona, Washington, Davies, Corbin. That one I think is pretty easy. I could even do it again.
Arizona, Washington, Davies, Corbin. Yeah, that does seem pretty easy. All right, Chicago at New York. We've got Lance Lynn on the mound for the White Sox. I don't have the pitcher here for the Yankees. I feel like he was showing up. Where's my phone? Oh, here it is. Do you know who's pitching? Randy Vasquez. I think I was actually getting to some of him in the lineup strategy. I was like, I feel like I know who the pitcher is. I just can't remember what the name is. It's somebody that I'm not very familiar with, but he was showing up in lineup generator looking pretty good. How much interest do you have in Lance Lynn or Vasquez here?
Quite a bit. Vasquez just shouldn't be 4K. He's pulling 30.5% ownership, 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, but a 44.8% chance of being a top 2 value. I don't know why DraftKings insists on putting 4K price tags on fully stretched out pitchers. I don't care how good or bad Vasquez is. I obviously, I do to some extent, but he's a 4K pitcher that is fully stretched out. that's kind of all that I need to know. He's looking at his pitch grades on Fangraphs, has a 70 grade curveball. For anybody not familiar, the scale goes from 20 to 80, 80 grade being elite, like the absolute best. He has a 70 grade curveball, very, very good curveball, 50 grade fastball, pretty average, pretty much average across the board, but except for the really good curveball. 47 and a third innings pitched at AAA this year, 10 starts there, striking out 25% of hitters, 4.88 FIP, 4.7 xFIP. Projection systems, the bat projects him for an 18.7% strikeout percentage, 4.59 FIP, ATCs at 22.4% K percentage, 4.22 FIP. I've said it a lot. I tend to kind of like the middle ground between those two. I think the bat is often overly pessimistic on guys that have not pitched in the majors. So finding the middle ground there is, pretty good. So call this guy a 20% K guy, 4.4 FIP. He's $4,000. Like, it just doesn't make sense. He's not a top prospect to the extent where I'm scared if I don't get to him. It's not like Andrew Abbott the other day. It's not like when Grayson came up at 4K or Bryce Miller came up at 4K or the Bobby Miller came up at 4K. He's not that level of prospect, but he does, at least still have one excellent pitch, some other average to slightly above average pitches. He's had strikeout success at AAA. At the very least, he's somebody where if you need to save money at pitcher, certainly can get there at 4K. On the other side for Lynn, tough matchup against the Yankees, but no Aaron Judge. So we know that the lineup's going to be weaker. You do have Donaldson and Stanton back, but at least with Stanton, that does also come with strikeouts in addition to the massive power. And most of the dangerous bats in this lineup are right-handed, which is a big deal for Lance Lynn. Rizzo is left-handed, Calhoun's left-handed, Bowers is left-handed, but Torres, Stanton, Donaldson, Volpe, these guys all hit from the right side. Lynn has pretty much always been a better pitcher, a much better pitcher against right-handed hitters. This season has been no different. 28.2% K percentage with a 301 expected WOBA to righties, only a 21.5% K percentage with a 422 expected WOBA to lefties. So I do think the upside is there for Lynn. It's obviously a risky matchup. It's a scary spot to get to, but not the strongest pitching slate, and he is $8,700, pulling 23% ownership. So I do like him a pretty good amount, and I think Vasquez is clearly the best point per dollar value pitcher.
Okay. SportsBiz points out that the smoke is really bad at Yankee Stadium. We need to watch the news. I mean, I think that we'll know before the game. Like, I think they would, they're not going to delay it for wildfire smoke. I would say it would be either postponement.
We should either get the game playing or not. I agree. It's possible they just don't play. It was bad yesterday too. They played through it. But yeah, it's at least something where it's not like you're going to get like a smoke storm in the middle of the game. I assume. I mean, now I guess there will be, but it's there. They're going to play in it or they're not.
Yeah, still a good call out to pay attention to the news. It's always obviously advisable to pay attention to the news, but
and I think that's probably true for most of the East Coast. I know it's pretty hazy, smoky in Baltimore right now too.
Okay. All right. How much interest do you have in the bats in this White Sox Yankees game?
I think both sides are pretty interesting for two different reasons. One, you have the White Sox just going up against a pitcher who's made one major league appearance. So who knows what you're getting from him. And like I just said, he doesn't project to be lights out at the major league level. He just projects to be better than $4,000. There's a pretty big difference there. So the White Sox only a 4.1 implied run total, but there is upside here. They are coming in with a 3.5% chance of being the top stack, only 1% ownership. You do get the added benefit of Vasquez pulling ownership as well if the White Sox, do well. On the Yankee side, it's more of just an upside play of they still have a lot of power in the lineup. Individually, though, I do like Anthony Rizzo quite a bit. You're getting a pitcher in Lynn who struggles with left-handed bats, and now he has to face them in Yankee Stadium with the short porch. So Rizzo does stand out as a really good play. Calhoun and Bowers, both really cheap, both give you plenty of home run upside as well. Obviously, Rizzo is the best left-handed hitter in the lineup, though, so he's the one that really stands out.
Okay, and how would you rank the four sides of the game?
Yeah, this one's tougher for me. This one kind of depends on how you're looking at it, I think. Lance Lynn would probably be the spot that Lance Lynn would be the spot that I get to the most if Randy Vasquez's price tag were real. Given that it's 4K on DraftKings, I guess Vasquez is first. On FanDuel, Lynn would be first, where you only have to roster the one pitcher. So one of the pitchers, kind of depending on what your lineup needs. Then I would say probably Yankees bats and then White Sox bats. But if you wanted to say you like the White Sox more, I wouldn't argue with you too much because, we do at least have a much less proven pitcher in Vasquez than Lynn.
Okay, makes sense. Joe Miner says, just left the Rochester. It's a lot worse than most would think, although Rochester very far from New York City. Interesting. Yeah, we get wildfire smoke
much
here.
Closer to Canada too.
Yeah, true. We do get some of that smoke here from the Canada wildfires, but it sounds like it's worse there than I've ever seen here. All right, Houston at Toronto. We've got Ronel Blanco on the mound for the Astros, Chris Bassett for the Blue Jays. What's your level of interest in these pitchers, Adam?
So Blanco's coming in at 5,200. He is sort of a logical pivot to Vasquez if you have to pay all the way down. But, he is facing the Blue Jays, which is obviously a much more difficult matchup than the White Sox. He's also $1,200 more. So 5,200 is cheap. But again, it just reiterates how bad the price is on Vasquez. You're still talking about paying like 25% more for a $5,200 Blanco. One start this year for the Astros, 10 total appearances, 17 in the third innings pitched. He has struck out 24.5% of hitters, 4.27 FIP. He's fine, but, again, not going out of my way to get to him against the Blue Jays. The real argument for him would just be, hey, I need a really cheap pitcher. He's getting 1/15 the ownership of Vasquez. I'll take a shot there, and that's fine, but I wouldn't be doing it too often. Bassett is really scary here, especially at $9,500. Tough matchup against Houston. I'm a little surprised that he's actually getting 12% ownership given the matchup and the increase in price tag. He's only struck out 21.5% of hitters this season, and then you get a brutal matchup here. He has been much, much better against right-handed hitters this year. 21% strikeout percentage still isn't great, but holding them to a 138 expected ISO and a 298 expected WOBA. Lefties are killing him. 227 expected ISO, 372 expected WOBA. You get a pretty balanced Houston lineup typically in the sense that it's right-hand heavy. You're probably going to have 7 righties in there, but the 2 lefties are 2 exceptionally good hitters, and Alvarez and Tucker, they're both going to be hitting in the top 5. So the part of the order you're facing the most is more balanced than the lineup as a whole. It's a tough matchup for Bassett. Like I get that there's not a lot of good pitching on this slate, but I think I'm a little bit more hesitant to get to him at 9,500 in the spot than the field appears to be.
Interesting. Yeah, I was getting in using Latham Center earlier when I was making that FOD. I was actually getting to a good amount of Blanco here. Was the kind of surprising to me. I guess he brings down the ownership quite a bit.
Right. I think it's reasonable because of the ownership and price. It's one of those, if at lock I see I'm getting, 20% of him or something, I'm going to understand why it's happening and I'm fine with it, but I'm not going to like it. And I'm going to just kind of be holding my breath until he gets out of the game.
Yep. Makes sense. How about the bats on the other side of this game?
Yeah. Both offenses here look pretty good. Bassett, like I said, hasn't been great this year. He's been good at limiting right-handed power, but that only goes so far too. And the right-handed power you're talking about in this case is Altuve, Pena, Bregman in particular. We know Julks is cheap and has a lot of power. Those guys at the top, they're not your average right-handed hitters. But the stuff that really stands out from the Houston side is Alvarez and Tucker. Really like them as one-offs, like them as a 2-man, like them if you're full stacking Houston, but individually love those two. The Toronto side, I think it's easier to make a case for the lineup as a whole, just because Blanco is less proven in the majors than Bassett. You have so many good hitters in this lineup, 5.3 implied run total. We have the Blue Jays right now coming in middle of the pack in stack score because they are expensive. In top stack percentage, they're about 5%, which is 6th highest on the slate, but basically the same as Cincy and the Mets for 4th. So in terms of top stack percentage, you have a pretty big drop-off. Well, you have the Giants and Dodgers, then you have a big drop-off to the Diamondbacks, then you have a big drop-off to everybody else. The Blue Jays are basically at the top of that everybody else list.
Okay. How would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Toronto, Houston, Bassett, Blanco.
Okay. Next up, we've got Boston at Cleveland. Cutter Crawford on the mound for the Red Sox. Tanner Bibby for the Guardians. How much interest do you have in these pitchers?
So Bibby is pretty interesting. He's 8,500. Tough matchup against Boston, but he has been a good strikeout pitcher this year. He is reasonably priced. So he does look pretty good to me. Right now, we actually have him second in the top 2 pitcher percentage at 16%, essentially the same as Charlie Morton. Pulling 19% ownership, so less ownership than Lance Lynn, who's $200 more with a slightly lower top 2 pitcher percentage. A lot less ownership than Corbin Burns, who's $1,700 more expensive. A little bit less ownership than Morton, who is, again, basically tied in top 2 pitcher percentage, but $700 more. So Bibby does actually look pretty good here despite the difficult matchup. And again, it just goes back to you don't have a ton of good pitchers on the slate, but you also don't have a ton of pitching that you would want to get to in good matchups. Burns is at the top facing the Orioles. Morton's facing the Mets. Lynn's facing the Yankees. Scherzer's facing the Braves. Webb is in Coors Field. So the fact that it's not a great matchup against Boston carries a little bit less weight because you can't find any good pitchers that have good matchups really today. So I do like getting to Bibby here. He's been solid so far in his rookie season. Crawford is a more difficult sell. Cleveland's been a very bad team offensively so far, one of, if not the worst teams in baseball against right-handed pitching. But Crawford, not a great pitcher in really any sense. He has struck out 28% of hitters so far this year, has given up power as well. So at 6,800, I think he's pretty tough to get to. Like if you're paying down, I think you're just going to pay down further.
Okay. Yeah, it's Bibby number 2 in our top pitchers tool. Kind of surprised me when I saw that. But yeah, good for him. Pitching pretty well. How much interest do you have in the bats in this game?
Not a lot. Crawford, has been solid enough this year, and the Guardians have been awful. You can always get to Jose Ramirez, Naylor, Bell, but pretty tough, I think, to really like Cleveland. And then on the other side, Bibby has been very good. You're never wrong for going to Devers in particular. Yoshida, Casas is cheap. But I think these are two of the more difficult offenses to get to.
All right. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of the game?
Bibby, Guardians, Crawford, Red Sox. Bibby's 1 for me. Everything else is sort of just like low-owned, hope that everything breaks your way tournament plays.
All right. We'll do one more game before we take a look at SoRare, since we started with the lineup generator. Here we've got the Dodgers at the Reds. Noah Syndergaard on the mound for the Dodgers. Brandon Williamson for the Reds. Any interest in these pitchers, Adam?
Not a lot. I did want to quickly go back to Cutter Crawford. Most recently, he pitched on June 3rd through 40 pitches, through 24 on the 31st against Cincy. He's primarily worked out of the bullpen this year, had a couple starts at the beginning of the season. So that's the big reason I think that he's tough to get to at 6,800. It's just that I doubt he's going super deep into this game. As far as the pitching in the Dodgers game, I think everybody's aware at this point how bad I think Syndergaard is. It's not the worst matchup against Cincy, but it's not a great matchup either. They still have a 4.8 implied run total. Not particularly interested in getting to Syndergaard, and definitely not interested in getting to Williamson here, facing a Dodgers offense that has a 6.2 implied run total in Cincinnati. Nice park upgrade for them. Obviously, tons and tons of good hitters in this lineup. It's not a pitching game for me.
All right. The bats may be more interesting. We've got Ellie De La Cruz here for the Reds. We've, of course, got the Dodgers, one of our top stacks on the board. How much interest do you have in the bats in this game?
Tons in the Dodgers. Obviously the ownership is there, but they are second in top stack percentage at 15.5%. They're pulling 15% ownership, 10% chance of being the top value stack. Williamson has made 4 starts in the majors, 21 innings pitched. He had 8 starts at AAA this year, 34 innings pitched, 6.25 xFIP at AAA, struck out 16.4% of hitters. The bat projects him for a 16% strikeout percentage in the majors with a 5.87 FIP, ATC 19% K percentage, 5.28 FIP. Just does not project to be particularly good. And now he's going up against the Dodgers. In his limited time in the majors, 260 expected ISO to righties, 217 to lefties. Granted, that's only on 45 pitches, but you're not shying away from guys like Freddie Freeman and Max Muncy here. And then the rest of the lineup's probably going to be just right-handed power. Mookie Betts, Will Smith, JD, Taylor, Vargas. Like, this is just a really, really appealing offense to get to. The Reds aren't quite as appealing, but they are still 5th in top stack percentage. I mentioned it before that you kind of have a couple tiers where it's the Giants and Dodgers at the top, Arizona in tier 2, and then tier 3 is like the Mets, the Reds, the Blue Jays, the Angels, the Rangers, all kind of lumped together. So still a good spot for them against Syndergaard. Doesn't miss a lot of bats anymore. 230 expected ISO to lefties so far this year. Only 128 to righties. But looking at guys like Jake Fraley at the top, he's going to look pretty good. The huge piece here, though, is Ellie De La Cruz. 2,700, probably batting cleanup at shortstop. He is the best prospect in baseball as of the last time I checked rankings. He runs fast, he throws hard, he hits the ball hard. His first major league hit yesterday was a double, 112 mile per hour exit velocity. The guy is a stud and has no business being $2,700. So should be one of the most popular guys on the slate. Good one-off, good mini stack guy, good full stack guy. Don't really care. Just play Ellie De La Cruz.
All right. And then how would you rank the four sides of the game?
Ellie De La Cruz 1, Dodgers 2, Reds 3, Syndergaard 4, Williamson 5.
All right. Perfect. That'll bring us to the halfway point. We made it through half of the games here. Perfect time to check in on our sponsor, SoRare. I'm going to throw a link into chat right now for anybody who hasn't yet signed up for SoRare. You can play for free when you sign up at SoRare. Please use the link that I just put into chat. Helps us out if you do. But when you sign up, you're going to get some free common cards from SoRare. You're going to get a number of cards to choose from and a salary cap essentially when you sign up for some common cards. Then you can enter those cards into contests where you can win real prizes that are worth real money that you can sell in the secondary market. So can't do much better than that, entering contests for free and having a chance at real prizes here. Of course, the next slate is going to start on Friday, so you got a couple days to prepare for it. I'm playing, what we're looking at here is my limited. So these are cards that I did have to pay for and or win in contests to play in the limited contests. Off to an okay start here. I got, my Coors players finally. They didn't play on Monday. They played yesterday. Got off to a good start. Haven't had my Wheeler start yet. He's going to be in a good spot. Strider hasn't started yet. So going to see some improvement in this lineup, I think, once my pitchers go. But off to a good start here. But again, you can play for free. You don't have to play this limited contest. If you want to just check it out for free, sign up. You're going to get some common cards you can play in the common contest and win real prizes worth real money. So check that out if you haven't already. All right. Let's get back to the slate. We've only got 15 more minutes to get through the last 5 games, starting with the Mets and the Braves. Max Scherzer on the mound for the Mets, Charlie Morton for the Braves. What's your level of interest here, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, some interest in both pitchers just because, again, we don't have the best pitching on this slate. Morton's coming in essentially tied with Bibby for second highest top 2 pitcher percentage, pulling 22% ownership. There's nothing about the matchup that I like. The Braves, or the Mets rather, have plenty of good hitters. They're difficult to strike out, but you need to roster 2 pitchers on DraftKings today, and it's tough to find guys that you love everything about their spot. So Morton looks fine, 25% K percentage, 3.82 xFIP. He's a good pitcher. The only issue is the matchup. So yeah, like 22% ownership to him seems perfectly fine. Same goes for Scherzer. 9,700 is more than I really would like to pay for him. The matchup against Atlanta is really tough. He's getting 8% ownership, but he does have a 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He has a 25.3% K percentage this year, at identical to Charlie Morton on the other side. 4.4 xFIP, higher than you're used to with Scherzer. But I think he's an interesting tournament play just because it seems like the field is essentially projected to say, hey, I don't trust this guy against the Braves. I don't like this price tag. But what about Chris Bassett against the Astros? Do you trust and like at 9,500? What about $9,200 Charlie Morton? Do you trust against the Mets? So it does look like he's going a little bit under owned. 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher at just 8% owned. All 4 of the pitchers ahead of him, ahead of Scherzer in top 2 pitcher percentage, are pulling at least 19% ownership. So I do like him as a contrarian tournament pitcher. I don't say I like him in the sense that I think he's going to do well. I just don't really think any of these pitchers are particularly likely to do well. So he looks like one that is going under owned.
Speaking of trusting pitchers, I made the mistake yesterday of trusting Mitch Keller, and it looked like a lot of the field, more of the field than expected, trusted Mitch Keller yesterday too. Didn't go so well for us, particularly because Kevin Gossman just went the fuck off. So it was like relative to Gossman, Keller looked awful.
Yeah, that was that worked out for me. I had like 42% Gossman and like 6% Keller.
Oh, nice.
And I was not comfortable with that. And then I was talking to Josh, and he had like a massive amount of Keller. And I was like, oh, this is just gonna be really annoying when Keller does what he should against the A's. And I'm just watching Josh's lineups go up and mine tank. But no, it worked out.
Yeah,
for me.
Worked out for you. All right.
Clark,
how about
I had a bunch of Clark Schmidt though, so that didn't.
Also, yeah, there was a lot of rough pitching on the slate. Yes, it was like Gossman just absolutely crushed. A lot of the pitchers that were in my lineups were getting like single-digit fantasy points. Not looking so good out there. All right, how much interest do you have in Mets or Braves bats?
Not too much. I mean, it's pretty much if you're going to either side, it is basically they're good offenses. One thing working in their favor is it does look like good hitting weather here. Supposed to be about 85 with the wind blowing out in Atlanta. As a result, you do have a 4.9 implied run total for the Braves against Scherzer, 4.6 for the Mets against Morton. Neither of these stacks are likely to be very popular. The Mets have a 5% chance of being the top stack, 3.8% aggregate ownership. Atlanta coming in with a 4% chance of being the top stack, 8% aggregate ownership, but that is primarily driven by Ronald Acuna at 16% and Sean Murphy at 4,200, way too cheap of a price tag for him at 12%. The rest of the offense, 7% or less. So this is a spot where I think the aggregate ownership percentage is a little bit misleading when you look at it for Atlanta. Overall, neither of these stacks are going to be too popular because they are facing pitchers that you're not super comfortable taking bats against. But good hitting conditions here, two very high upside offenses. I do like them as far as lower owned tournament stacks go.
Okay, and then how would you rank the four sides of the game?
I guess Morton, Scherzer as a contrarian play. The Braves probably more likely to succeed though. And then I guess Mets last. But this is just a game where it's all kind of similar to me. They're all talented. All four sides of this game have a lot of upside. All four sides are talented. None of it makes me feel very comfortable, but it's pretty likely that something good comes out of this game.
Sure. All right. Makes sense. Next up, we've got your Baltimore Orioles facing the Brewers. Dean Kramer on the mound for the Orioles. Corbin Burns for the Brewers. I know that you had some concern about the smoke here. Do you have? I mean, it's same as you said earlier. Oh, it's in Milwaukee. Oh, all right. Never mind. Good point. Good call out there. All right. How much interest do you have in Burns or Kramer here?
Yeah, definitely interest in Burns. He hasn't been as good this year from a strikeout standpoint, but we have seen strikeouts tick up a bit recently. 7 in his last start, 8 in the start before that, 5 3 starts ago in a tough matchup with Houston, 7 apiece against St. Louis and KC. So we are hopefully seeing his strikeout stuff come back. Overall this year, 22.8% K percentage, 4.4 xFIP. Again, it's risky based on what he's done so far this year. This is similar sort of to the Aaron Nola spots where not that Burns is facing the Tigers today, but that you kind of just assume he's going to get back to normal sooner rather than later. He has been trending in a good direction. He is getting the most ownership, the most ownership on the slate at 31% on DraftKings, highest top 2 pitcher percentage going up against Baltimore. The Orioles are still without Cedric Mullins, which is nice. Could have Gunnar Henderson back today, but not the worst spot against the Orioles. 3.7 implied run total there. So I do like getting to Burns. As far as Kramer goes, it's sort of interesting. He's only pulling 5% ownership at 7,800. We know the Brewers do strike out quite a bit, but that's just a little bit more expensive price tag than I really want to pay for Kramer. 19.6% K percentage, 4.6 xFIP this year. If you're using him here and there in large field tournaments, I think it's okay, but it's not somebody I'm going out of my way to get to.
All right, and then how much interest do you have in the bats here?
The Brewers bats look pretty interesting to me. Kramer has allowed more expected power this year than actual. And, keeping in mind, he does pitch in Camden Yards, which really kills right-handed power. He's allowed a 147 expected ISO this year to righties, 208 actual ISO, lefties with a 183 actual ISO, 273 expected ISO. So he has run pretty good in terms of limiting power. You're getting a Brewers lineup that does have some power in a park that isn't bad to hit in. Christian Yelich, William Contreras, Rowdy Tellez, I think are the 3 that really stand out the most to me. But this team also isn't very expensive, so they work as a value stack too. We have them 4th from the bottom, actually, in top stack percentage at 2%, 2.5% aggregate ownership. But individually, I do like a few of those bats. We have the Orioles 2nd from the bottom, 2% chance of being the top stack. Not really looking to get there. The normal caveat does apply. The Orioles just win slates, but and they are cheap, but I don't anticipate getting to much.
All right. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of this game?
Burns, Brewers, Kramer, Orioles.
All right. We made it through 7 of our 10 games here, Adam. So just 3 games left. I did just put the link for the Sims tool into chat. I pinned it to chat. So if you're looking for that link, I didn't put it in there earlier. So I just want to make sure that you have, you can sign up at the link that I just put into chat. Check that out if you haven't already. All right. St. Louis at Texas. Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Cardinals. John Gray for the Rangers. What's your level of interest in these pitchers, Adam?
I think Gray is interesting at 8,900. He's pulling 13.5% ownership, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Not the best matchup with St. Louis. Obviously they do have quality hitters in their lineup, supposedly. They also haven't been very good this year. 4.2 implied run total. Most of the most dangerous hitters in this lineup are right-handed. So you like to see that for John Gray. He does typically have a much higher strikeout percentage against righties than lefties. Going back to the start of last year, 26.8% K percentage to righties, 20.9 to lefties. This year, he's at 21.5 to righties, 18.8 to lefties. But he is another pitcher that I expect that his numbers going forward are just better than his numbers have been to this point. We have seen him turn things around in recent starts. He struck out at least 5 in 5 straight starts after a pretty rocky start to the season. He struck out 7 guys in his first start of the year against Baltimore, but then he went 5 straight starts without striking out more than 4. And in 4 of those starts, he only struck out 2. Seems to have figured it out, though. Like I said, 8, 5, 6, 8, and 5 strikeouts in his last 5 starts, at least 7 innings pitched in 4 of those. So not to just look at recent games and say like, oh, like he's good. We have a long track record of John Gray being good.
Sure.
And we have a small sample to start this season of him not being good at getting strikeouts. And then recently he's been back to it. So the assumption on him should have always been that the strikeouts were going to return, and we have seen them return. So I do like getting him a bit at 8,900. On the other side for Flaherty, pretty tough sell at 8,100. He hasn't been a very good pitcher this year in general. The strikeout stuff is okay at 23%, but he's walking 12.5% of hitters, 4.55 xFIP, and now he's going up against arguably the best offense in baseball, 4.8 implied run total. It would be one thing if you threw like, a 7K price tag on Flaherty, and you could make the argument that you're getting a discount for the matchup, but 8,100 for Flaherty, just based on what he's done this year in general, is kind of a steep asking price, and then you're doing it against the Rangers. Makes it tough for me to want to get there.
Okay. Sir Manning says, hit the like button. That's a good call out. Thank you, Sir Manning. Yeah, please do hit the like button if you haven't already. All right. How much interest do you have in the bats? Obviously, the pitchers, look pretty, are not the worst pitchers to, not the pitchers that you really want to be targeting. How much interest do you have in the bats in this game?
Not too interested in St. Louis. If you're going there, I think it's mostly just a talent play where you're just playing a low-owned Goldschmidt, Arenado, whoever. I am more interested in the Texas side, though, because Flaherty has been not great this year. One thing he has done well is limit power. 122 expected ISO to lefties, 148 to righties. So I don't view this as a great spot for Texas, but I do just like Texas whenever they're in, sort of neutral matchups, but not getting much ownership. And right now we do have them with a 4.5% chance of being the top stack, only 3.5% aggregate ownership. They are very expensive, but that shouldn't matter too much on a slate where you do have a 4K pitching option. You also have plenty of mid-range pitching. If you're going, let's say Bibby plus Morton, like you're still only spending 18K on pitching there. So I don't think it should be that difficult to get to Texas bats if you want to. And they are going a bit under-owned here, so I like them in tournaments.
All right. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of this game?
Gray 1, Rangers 2, Flaherty 3, Cards 4.
All right. Next up, we've got that Coors game. We've got San Francisco at Colorado. Logan Webb on the mound for the Giants. Connor Siebold for the Rockies. Playing any pitchers in Coors today?
If you do, I think it's pretty clearly Webb. The Rockies are not a good offense. Logan Webb is a very good pitcher. You have a 4.4 implied run total on the Rockies. To put that in context, it is lower than the Rangers. It's similar to the Brewers. It's lower than both sides of the Atlanta game. It's lower than both sides of the Reds game. It's not that much higher than the Guardians. It's lower than the Blue Jays. It's similar to the Astros. It's lower than both sides of the Nats game. So, yes, pitching in Coors Field is bad. Yes, it's going to make Logan Webb project a lot lower than he would if he were facing the Rockies in San Francisco. But I don't think Webb should actually just be ignored here, given that he does have one of the best actual matchups. It's in Coors, but he's facing the Rockies. Is that it's not that much worse than facing the Braves in Atlanta or facing the Mets in Atlanta or facing the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, yet he's getting less ownership than all of these pitchers. 7.5% projected ownership with a 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I actually do have interest in Webb at that ownership level just because I don't think he's much different than Scherzer, Lynn, Morton. So I am interested in him despite the ballpark. I clearly have no interest in Connor Siebold.
All right. How about how much interest in these Coors bats?
Oh, a lot, particularly the Giant side. They are projected to be the most popular team on the slate, but they also earn it with their top stack percentage coming in at about 17.5%, 17% ownership. They're not expensive, so you can kind of build whatever you want around them as well. And there's also the possibility, we saw it last night. I don't know exactly how things looked going into the slate in the top stacks tool, but we saw it last night where more ownership ended up coming into the Dodgers. More ownership ended up coming into some other spots than the Giants. They really weren't that popular. So that's a trend we've seen in baseball over the last few years where the Giants absolutely should be the highest owned team on this slate, but you just kind of see the field correct or adjust for ownership, and they end up being popular, but not that popular. So I do like getting to the Giants quite a bit here. Great matchup, great spot against Seabold, great ballpark. Obviously, the pricing is very reasonable. $3,900 Lamont Wade. I mean, you could argue that's too cheap of a price tag for him in most matchups, excluding Coors Field.
Right.
Jack Peterson's only 4,100, Conforto 43, Haniger 3,700. I mean, these are just essentially free hitters in Coors Field that probably won't get as much ownership relative to other spots as they should. 184 expected ISO to righties this year for Seabold, 165 to lefties. As far as the Rockies go, they're in Coors and they're not going to be popular, so there is always some merit there, but it's a very difficult matchup against Webb. It's a very bad offense. They still only have a 3% chance of being the top stack despite being in Coors. And like I said, they have a relatively low implied run total compared to other teams on the slate. It's not even like, oh, this is low for Coors Field. It's, oh, I can name like 8 teams that have higher implied run totals or the same. So much, much more interested in the Rocky side, even though they are more popular.
Speaking of the low ownership going to the Giants, yesterday I was making my lineups in lineup generator because I'm on live before lock, not going to be able to use the Sims tool while I'm doing a show. I'm not advanced enough with it yet, but so I just used lineup generator, and I put in chalky lineups because I was like, well, the Giants look good. They're like one of the chalkier teams, and I wasn't getting to any Giants, the chalky lineups. I had to actually switch to the balanced lineups to get to Giants in Coors Field, which kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, yesterday was weird. So like, I didn't do any content yesterday. I took the day off, and so I hadn't like looked at who anybody was facing or top stacks or anything. I just plugged everything in and ran all my stuff. So I didn't have any context or anything, and so I see my exposures, and I'm getting like 15% Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, guys from the Dodgers, and then I'm getting like I think like 20% Estrada, and then like 10 to 15% of a lot of the other Giants. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, so I assume I'm fading the Giants. I'm overweight on the Dodgers. Like, cool, sounds good. And then I see like actual ownership. I'm like, oh, I'm under the field on the Giants, and I'm under the field on the Dodgers, and I'm over the field on the Giants, despite having higher levels of a lot of the Dodgers. Like it was really weird.
Right. Yeah, it was a fun slate, I thought. Although I also lost tiny bit of money. All right, how would you rank the 4 sides of this Coors game?
Giants 1, Webb 2, Rockies 3, roster a pitcher that isn't pitching 4, Connor Seabold 5.
All right, makes sense. All right, final game of the slate. We've got Chicago at Los Angeles. Jameson Taillon on the mound for the Cubs. Jaime Barria for the Angels. Any interest in these pitchers?
Not too much. Barria might be going a little bit under-owned at 7K. 10.6% top 2 percentage, 10% ownership percentage. He spent most of this year out of the bullpen, but he has been starting recently. Overall this year, strikeout stuff's been very, very good. 27% K percentage to lefties, just shy of 25% to righties. You do expect that to come down a bit as a starter. Went 5 innings on the 31st against the White Sox, did pick up 6 strikeouts there. Went 5 innings against Boston the 22nd, picked up 6 strikeouts there. He also did throw 90 pitches in that most recent outing, so that was good to see. I do think he's going a little under-owned at 7K, just given that it's a cheap price tag. He's in a different price tier than most of the pitchers ahead of him in top 2 pitcher percentage. Every pitcher that has a higher top 2 pitcher percentage on DraftKings is at least $8,500. And every pitcher with a higher top 2 pitcher percentage is getting less ownership other than Scherzer and Webb, who obviously are at different price points. So I do think Barria is going a little bit overlooked here, given that he threw 90 pitches last time out. The strikeout stuff has been good, even if it does regress a bit, as you would expect, having to go through the order more than once. It's still good enough for 7K. So I do have some interest there. Taillon at 5,500 is underpriced. I kind of, like I was saying with Patrick Corbin, major league starting pitchers just shouldn't be $5,500. He has been very bad this year. He does have a dangerous matchup against the Angels in a good hitter's park. I don't think he's a great play. 21% K percentage, 4.67 xFIP. So he has been unlucky this year. He has an ERA over 7 FIP is 4.1. XFIP is 4.7. Strikeout percentage is better than $5,500. He is another guy I would throw into the Blanco territory, where I'm not going to be thrilled if I'm getting to Taillon, but if he's going to be 4% owned and Vasquez is going to be 30, I do think that he's going under owned.
Makes sense. How much interest in the bats here?
Definitely interest in the bats, particularly the Angels side, just because you are getting quality hitters against a pitcher in Taillon who hasn't been great this year. Good hitters park. Shohei Ohtani in particular, absolutely love. That goes without saying, but Taillon has, for a while, had pretty drastic splits between righties and lefties. Doesn't really give up power to righties, and that's continued this year. 129 expected ISO to righties, 283 expected WOBA, 23% K percentage, like legitimately good numbers against right-handed bats. 18% K percentage with a 296 expected ISO to lefties, 426 expected WOBA. If you go back to last year, it's still 203 expected ISO to lefties, 353 expected WOBA. Really makes Ohtani stand out even more than he usually would. It makes Matt Tice look good as a $2,500 catching option. Jared Walsh, if he's in the lineup, Mickey Moniak, if he's in the lineup, they're both going to look good. Clearly, even though Taillon is good against righties, Trout's still going to be great. Rendon left yesterday's game early. I don't remember why. I assume it's just because he's Anthony Rendon and he can't play more than 3 games in a row. But if he's in the lineup, he's 3,300. Renfro's 3,600. Again, like I prefer the lefties, but there's so much right-handed power that's cheap here. I think the Angels as a stack look very good. I think grabbing lefties as one-offs or mini stacks looks really good. 4.5 implied, 4.5 top stack percentage, 5.5% aggregate ownership. Looking at the ownership individually, though, it's kind of similar to the Braves, where you have Ohtani pulling 12%. The next highest owned hitter is Trout at 7, Ward at 6, Tice at 6. Everybody else even less than that. So as a stack, they're not as popular as the aggregate ownership suggests.
All right. And then how would you rank the 4 sides of this game?
Angels, Berea. I think Taillon and the Cubs are kind of comparable.
All right. We made it through the end of the game-by-game breakdown. Adam, if you're going to 3 different stacks, who are your 3 favorite stacks today?
Giants. I mean, the way ownership looks right now, Giants, Dodgers, probably the Angels.
3 favorite pitchers?
Arizona also a very reasonable third stack. 3 favorite pitchers, that's a much more difficult question. I guess Burns, Bibby, Vasquez, but like in tournaments, I like the idea of being contrarian with pitching. I think the chalk offenses are better than the chalk pitching today. So in tournaments, I don't mind getting the Logan Webb at 7% owned. I don't mind taking some shots at 4% owned Taillon when I pay down. I don't mind taking some shots at Scherzer. So, again, I don't think that any of the pitching today is that great.
All right. Joe Miner asks, your favorite single entry pitcher for FanDuel?
Let me pull up their pricing. Probably Burns. He's pulling 16% ownership, so he's actually lower owned than Lynn. Morton is an okay pivot in terms of ownership, but it's just tough to pay more for him than for Burns in that good hitting weather. So yeah, it's probably Burns. I don't mind also, $9,500 3% owned John Gray is kind of interesting if you're going with a chalkier stack.
Okay. I think that when I was running on lineup generator, which you can check out that video. I already made my lineup generator video. It's probably up on YouTube already. But I was getting to a lot of the cheaper pitchers because of how good the stacks are that they allow you to get to. So I was getting to a little bit of Vasquez, some of Ronald Blanco, those kind of level pitchers, which kind of surprised me. Might have been just like the even on FanDuel. Yeah, I was getting to them as my single pitcher. Not always, but I was getting to some of them because they allowed me to get to Giants and Dodgers, full stacks.
Yeah. If you're going that route, I think the $6,200 price tag on Berea is really interesting. The biggest concern is that he's in a pitcher's park facing an offense that isn't bad. But the other big concern is that, will the Angels let him go 6 innings and get the quality start? The fact he threw 90 pitches last start, I think means there's at least a chance. Like if he's pitching well and he's through 5 innings at 80, 75 pitches, I don't know that they pull him. They still could, just to avoid him facing the order a third time. I think that's a completely reasonable thing for them to do, but there's at least a chance that he could get 6 innings here.
Okay. And home run pick.
Shohei. And if not Shohei, then one of the Astros left Alvarez, but I'll go Shohei.
I'm going to go with Max Muncy. We've got him with a 41% chance of hitting a home run tonight, Max Muncy. Pretty crazy.
That is a big number.
We've got Shohei at 28%, so he's still towards the top of the board as well. All right, Adam, that'll do it for this show. Any final thoughts? Where can people find you today?
I will have my article out and my Bet Pro video out shortly. I'll be back at 7:30 Eastern with Josh for the NBA Live Before Lock.
Are you on Live Before Lock? Not Deeper Dive?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to be back in 20 minutes with Lofty doing an Underdog NBA show. Everything else I'm doing today, I'm very packed today with content, but none of it's going to be live. I'm going to be recording High Stakes with Matthew Bellman immediately after that show with Lofty. Did I pick? Jake says that I picked Muncy. I just use the tools. So the tools of like Muncy 2 days in a row. So I'll be doing Underdog NBA followed by High Stakes with Matthew Bellman. If you have any questions for fantasy tips, Matt, check out my Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I send out a tweet to ask for any questions that you might have. And then after that, I'm also going to be on Theory of DFS with Blender. So busy day today, but not a lot of live stuff. But my last show will be in 20 minutes with Lofty for Underdog NBA. So check us out there. Thank you guys very much for joining us today. And of course, hit the like button on your way out if you haven't already. I'll see you in 20 minutes or tomorrow.